yeah, so speaking of that in the mental health, this is Maria Ortiz. This is my best friend for a while now
Yeah.
from high school,
High school.
sophomore year.
Sophomore
There we
year.
go. We met in sophomore year, and we went through a lot during those times, right?
Yeah.
Learned about relationships. We learned about each other from that cultural perspective.
Yep.
But I'm really glad that you're on this podcast because I think a lot of people should understand where you're coming from and the uniqueness, right?
Hmm.
Not just your first gen and everything. I'll let you explain that, but just how much more you dug deep into what you're going into. And I still want to learn, right? I know
Yeah.
every time I ask you, you try to give me more information. I'm like, yeah, I didn't know that that was part of it.
Yeah.
So tell everybody about yourself, just a little bit of who
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to be here. I think it's an honor for me to be here and for us to continue our friendship, and it's great. But my name is Maria Ortiz. I'm 25 years young,
There you go.
and I'm a first generation. I'm now in my master's program for clinical mental health counseling, but I was a first generation college student, the first in my family to pursue higher education because I'm the oldest. And my family is actually from Central America, a country, Honduras to be more specific. I was born here. I'm also a first generation American. But
Mhm.
yeah, a Latina mommy, just
Latina.
trying to make some money, and in the mental health profession.
That's the best way to put it, right?
Exactly.
Put money and mental health profession together.
Yeah,
I like that. That's
that's a
funny.
hard one.
It is, yeah. So, I think the biggest part of where I want to start off with
Mhm.
is just more of, in the background of being Hispanic,
Mhm.
right? There are a lot of stigmas to how America treats Hispanics in
Mhm.
general. It's minorities in general. You know that, but the way that you're planning it is just something that I truly admire. But I think highly of what you do because in the field of like we were talking about mental health, it's not very shown in the Asian culture, and from what I understand, it's not that much in the Hispanic culture.
Right.
So
Right.
you being in that situation, what started it first of all for you to even go in this? Because you're starting a new path.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think from a very early age, I just had this satisfaction of helping others, like in
Hmm.
any way. It fills my heart to see someone go through a struggle and for me to be able to like help them or get them to where they need to be. But in my family, we had some mental health crises, and I was there, from a very early age, and I kind of saw what the process was like, and I was like, okay, this is something that is interesting to me, and it piqued my interest. But I think very similar to Asian cultures, my parents were like doctor, lawyer, that's it.
Yep.
Like, and especially because they're immigrants, they moved here so that we could have better opportunities, and those are like the two professions that everyone, wants to be. Um but it was not I wasn't interested in
Right.
law or in medicine like that. So I took AP Psych in at Parkview during high school,
Hmm.
and I completely bombed it. Like, it was so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved what I was learning, but I mean, at the time, I guess I didn't have the skills to excel, or I don't know what the issue was. But I was like, this isn't gonna stop me. I'm
Hmm.
gonna pursue it when I go to college, and I did. But even till this day, like, my father still doesn't like 100% support what I
Sure.
decided to do,
Right.
because it's just not like, I think everything in my culture is like fixed with like a spanking or like
Right.
with punishment, and they almost don't validate what's going on. So it's something that's been hard to navigate, but I mean, it's my passion. I know that at the end of the day, I can go to sleep in peace knowing that, I did this for this person. Yeah, like, end
Right.
of
Yeah.
story. End of story. So it's hard. It's hard. There's definitely some obstacles, but we're getting through it little by little.
Yeah. Well, and see, that's the thing that when you told me that from the beginning when we
Mm-hmm.
first met, of your college journey when you did that, I was like, this is somebody that is truly unique because it takes a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
People don't For people who aren't Hispanic, can you explain to them just kind of like how hard it is on you when your parents don't support you, right? Like I understand that from a different, like an Americanized perspective,
Hmm.
but when it comes from a Hispanic perspective, it's a lot deeper than that,
Yes,
you know?
yes, because Hispanic culture is very rooted in family.
Right,
Like you don't make a decision without consulting it with your mom, your dad. They very much have a like a very heavy input on what you're gonna do.
right.
Not only with school, like just in like in general.
Mm,
Um, and it's because we're a collectivistic culture, and Asian culture is very similar. We're collectivistic. In America, you're individualistic.
yeah,
So you're very much on your own, and you can kind of make whatever decision you want, and you don't have to ask anyone. So um, it was hard because my parents are business people. You know,
right,
they had their business, they had their businesses, they have their businesses, and this profession is very much you start working for somebody else, like you're working for somebody else. You
right,
can put like with time get to have your own business, but it was just hard, like, you know, and not having the support of your family
right.
is difficult. I mean, for me, I think for anyone really, but as a Latina, it is hard to like have to go against what they want. And
Exactly.
you almost feel guilty. There was a
Right.
month, there was like this 1 month, I was like, you know what? I'll just be a pediatrician because I like working with kids, right?
Right,
So like, let me just I'm gonna change all my courses up and start taking all the science courses
right,
to meet those prereqs to go to med school.
right.
So I took chem, and that was, oh my goodness, that was such a mistake. That was such a mistake. I remember the first day of class, the professor said, I want everyone to introduce themselves and tell me what your major is.
Right,
Everyone was like bio, math, chem, you know, one by one.
right.
It was alternating those three. And I was like, psychology. I could just feel that.
STEM, right?
I
Yeah.
could feel the eyes, and I was just like, "Oh my goodness!" And I actually had, I scheduled to meet with her, and she said, "You're gonna have to change your major if you want to go to med school, like because you're
Wow.
just not gonna make it. You're not,
Really?
yeah." And I thought that I would because it's like different, you know, like
Sure.
I could
Which
bring
is the
something,
case.
yeah, I could bring something different to the table, but she said no. She said no, and then I was like, you know what, this is not what I want to do, and I went home crying that day. And I told my mom because my mom is more supportive of me. And she said, I'm going to support you with whatever you want to do.
Hmm.
Okay. And you're the one going through school, and you're the one that's going to have to work, and you're the one that's going to have to study.
Right,
So you have to be at peace with the decision you make.
right.
You know,
Exactly.
I'm not going to work that job. Your dad's not going to work the job. You are. So
Right.
go ahead and just stay where you were, you
Yep.
know? And so, yeah, I went through my own mental health crisis.
Which everybody does,
Yeah,
right?
everyone.
Whoever says they don't is truly they're falsifying,
Oh yeah,
right?
for sure.
What's going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a common thing to talk about it now these days. Well, for other cultures, not for us, and that's kind of like this big part, right? Of why I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to emphasize for people out there like us, first gen students who have to make a path, but also listen to their parents in the sense of not that they're controlling us, but also we understand that there's a tradition that we keep
Mm-hmm.
that we
Mm-hmm.
hold, and that's a big part.
Yeah.
But so before I get into it, what is your goal? Because I think the audience kind of wants to know, like
Yeah.
in general, you're in the master's program now, but what is that leading up to?
Yeah. So the goal is to be a pediatric clinical psychologist.
Okay,
So getting my PhD in clinical psych, and then working with kids and teenagers,
gotcha.
essentially.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this master's program you're doing now, how long is it?
It's it's like 2.5 years. It all depends on how fast you do it,
Sure.
but it should be like 2 to 3 years,
Right.
depending on how
Right.
many courses you take and all that.
Right. And then from there, you go ahead and apply to PhD
Yeah.
school, right? Schooling
Yeah.
for that, for psychology.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can, right after getting your bachelor's in psych, you can directly apply to a PhD program and just go straight into your doctorate. And I did.
Mhm.
But this is the reality of being a student. I got denied at
Right. Yeah,
at
sure.
all the schools, you know, and that was a huge like letdown and
Sure.
disappointment.
Yep.
Because I don't know about you. I don't know if it's a girl thing, but you're just like planning everything. Like, okay, at 22, I'm going to graduate. Then I'm going to go to school and graduate at this time. And then I'm going to get married and have kids at this time. And
Yep.
so when they said no, I was just like, crap, what am I going to do?
Right.
You know? And so my best next step was to just get into a master's program.
Sure.
It wasn't my
Sure.
intention, you know, but I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and not do anything. Like,
Absolutely.
I have to keep moving forward.
Hmm.
So that's where the master's program came in. Clinical mental
Yep.
health counseling, super relevant, connected to psychology. And so I applied to Mercer and I got in, and that's where we are right now.
See, that's a big part of it, though. Like
Yeah.
now, yeah, you're first gen from the bachelor point, but now you're first gen in masters,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're gonna be first gen in just a couple of years,
Yeah.
or even sooner, and into the PhD program.
Right.
Right? There's levels to this.
Yeah.
You're on
It's
that level.
crazy. I
Yeah.
don't believe it sometimes. Like,
Right.
and it almost feels, I don't know, isolating because no one in my family understands what I'm going through, like
Sure.
the application process. I have to like volunteer and research or like do stuff for free because I want to get my foot in the door and
Yep.
like be relevant and be competitive when I apply. And no, I'm not getting paid to do this, dad. Like, it's free, you
Right.
know, like, and I have to, like, in
Sure.
order to get to where I need to be, like, I have to. So it feels very isolating, I think.
Yep.
And I think that's why it's important to, like, stay connected to your community, like, with you.
Hmm.
You completely understand what I'm going through.
Absolutely.
But at
Yep.
home, like, no one understands.
Yep.
And so it's tough. It's tough.
You're in a box, and like until you go outside of that box, you can't get into it. But the life that you're in, you're studying full time,
Right. Full
right?
time.
And then on top of that, you have other extracurricular activities that I know you do. So it's like you don't really have time either. Like even this time that we have,
Yeah.
we talk about that. It took so long to get to this point,
Right.
but it's very difficult for you, especially in that. I understand that, and especially in the medical field, you give a lot out. Psychology is part of that. It's a key part,
Mhm.
and so people don't understand that this medical field is you're not in it for the money. You know, whether you're a doctor or psychologists make bank too.
Mhm.
Now they do, but it takes so many years of sacrifice that they don't understand that. And again, I relate to the part of it's free. You're giving out free work.
Yep.
Right. And your parents may not understand that, or my parents never did. When it's like business, there
Yeah.
has to be money involved. Money makes the
Mhm.
world. And I'm like, yes, it does. But also, there's another side of it to get training, right?
Right.
Businesses, you don't really need that much education in a sense to start it because you'll learn as you go. Same with this, but you have to have a fundamental before you start it. With the business, you don't have to have a fundamental. You can start one way or another,
Right.
depending on the business, obviously.
Right.
But that's just a general consensus. So when you do that, I understand the isolation part because that is such a huge factor, right, into like who you are.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
But it's huge.
I mean, and sometimes I'm like, it's like I don't even realize where I'm at.
Right.
You know, like
Yeah.
like you just said, oh, like, your first generation masters, and then you'll be like the first doctor in my family.
Exactly.
And you get so used to doing it, and like you don't talk about it that you're like, whoa, like I'm really here right now. Like
Right.
I was at Mercer outside when it was in the fall, early fall, and I was just looking at the campus, and I was on my MacBook Pro with my iPhone drinking a macchiato.
Right.
And I'm like, you need to be grateful. Like,
Mhm.
you cannot forget, like, this is privilege,
Mhm.
like,
Right.
this is a blessing. Don't take it for granted,
Right.
because we get, like, I know for me, like, I'm like, oh, I don't want to study. I don't want to do this. Like, this is annoying. But I'm like, wow, like, I'm really
Right.
here. And it was all because my parents made a decision years ago to
Right.
immigrate to this country. And
Mhm.
that's a huge, like, thing. And to put me through school, and I don't know, it was like a
Full circle moment. Yeah.
full circle moment.
Well, I see it's so hard, right? Because when you're in America, it's so easy to get things that you kind of forget where you are, right?
Yep.
Now, if we were to go back to Honduras or Pakistan,
Mm-hmm.
we'd find out real quick. I wouldn't survive. That's what
Me neither.
I'd be gone. So
Yeah.
it's that stuff, right? Like it's great that you're
Mhm.
able to find that, right? Gratefulness is like what keeps you humble in the first
Yep.
place. It keeps you kind of standard in the sense of, okay, you know what? Maybe I don't need that coffee, or maybe I don't need this and that. Like it just helps,
Mhm.
right? And you just taking the time to sit is the hardest thing to do as an American,
Mhm.
because the society that we're surrounded by is just go work, work, work.
Yep. Yep.
Prime. I want Amazon Prime right now. Like that's what it
Yeah.
is, right?
Yeah.
That mentality. So it's difficult, but it's so hard to go back to it. You have to figure out some way to continue to remember. Okay, yeah, I'm here.
Yep.
2 years ago, we were both in undergrad,
Yep.
right? And we were dealing with this nasty like courses,
Yeah.
paying off whatever, to get it, just to get a bachelor degree and not a job out of it,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's like a hard part, especially in the medical field like I talk about.
Yeah, I think we just need to be more mindful and present, you know.
Right.
Like I had to be present in that moment to really take in everything that was happening.
Sure.
And nothing was happening. I was sitting,
Right.
like
Exactly.
I was just sitting looking outside, but
Right.
yeah, you have to stay humble, you have to stay grounded, and really take advantage of those moments.
Exactly. So somebody who's like, I'm trying to help the listeners kind of figure out where they want to go, but if they wanted to start out in psychology, let's say they're, going into their bachelor's,
Hmm.
what do they need to be? Do they have to be a STEM, or sorry, a major in psychology, or what is something that you've seen that really helps advance somebody in that situation?
Right. So I mean, you can get your bachelor's in psychology and, kind of the traditional route, get your master's in psychology. And if you want to be a therapist, so
Sure.
I think a lot of people are like confused about what a therapist is, a psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor. So
Please explain that, by the way,
yeah,
because I'm
yeah.
confused. I'm that guy.
I didn't know before
Okay.
my master's program. So in the state of Georgia, you can be a licensed professional counselor. And that means you've gotten training, you're licensed, you've taken an exam, and you can practice.
Hmm.
And you can have your own office after, like, your own practice after getting your master. So you can see clients, but you cannot prescribe medication. Okay.
Okay.
That's counselor slash therapist. Therapist isn't the like an actual legit term. It's counselor, but people say therapist.
Okay.
A psychologist has a doctorate degree, a PhD or a PsyD in psychology. It could be community psychology, clinical psychology. There's all different types. And they can also see clients, have their own practice. And again, they cannot prescribe. You make more money if you're a doctor. So, like,
Sure.
psychologists make more money than a therapist or a counselor would make. And then a psychiatrist is a medical doctor. You've
Okay.
gone to medical school and you can prescribe medication
Right.
and all that. So that's the difference between those three.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point that you bring up, because at one point I didn't even know what a psychiatrist was until I had to go with one of my friends. He was
Hmm.
like scared to talk about this. He's like, "Oh, what's the difference between a psychologist and psychiatrist?" And I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh, good question." But yes, you're right. Like psychiatrists go to the whole residency
Right.
programs, so that's completely different. That's medical school,
That's
right?
medical school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which medical school is another
That's
topic on its
a
own.
whole nother world.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so your PhD program for psychology, how long is that?
It's usually 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
6 years.
Okay, so you're in the 6 years. Are you working during that time or no?
You're not working.
Okay, clearly not,
You're
because
not
it's a
working.
doctorate program.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm still taking that in, because sorry, that was a little too much. So,
Yes, that's how I feel like
right.
every day.
Yeah.
I'm like, I still need 6 more years and I'm not going to be making money.
Yes. Right.
Like, husband, where you at? And you better have a good job.
Yeah, hopefully this can give you applications going, right? This
Right,
podcast.
right.
So with that, like the 6 years that you're in there, right? What is the general consensus of what you're learning in that route?
So, if you go to a PhD program in psychology, it's more research. So, you're
Hmm.
doing a lot of research, you have a dissertation, and all of that. And you have to do hours like towards the end of your program
Okay.
and all that. Um, what was the question again? Sorry.
Yeah. Just what do you have? Like, what are you expected to do in those 6 years? Research.
Just research. A
Research is a
lot
big
of
part. Okay.
research. Yeah, a lot of research.
Wow, that's 6 years of research. And so
Hmm.
after that, are you just going straight out into the field, or is there like a residency like medical school is, or?
Yeah, you do have, it's something similar. I'm not quite sure, but I know you have to get like some type of internship
Okay. Yep.
position. Um, yeah, you have to get that because I worked with a PhD student. I was a research assistant, and after graduation, she went to do like a residency or internship
Gotcha.
type of thing.
Okay,
Mhm.
gotcha. And so I know that sometimes, like from a business perspective, people like to do that, but they can very often kind of go for private practice.
Mhm.
Can psychologists do that on the how does that usually work? Do most people go into private practice, or do they end up with a corporation, and working for them?
I think it all depends on the person.
Okay.
At least for me, I want to, after getting my PhD, I do want to work for like some type of institution first and just get my feet wet and get comfortable with the role.
Right.
And then eventually get like open a private practice.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
And if you have your PhD in psychology, you can also be a professor. So
Right.
that's something that I'm like, okay, when I'm older, like if I don't want to practice anymore, I could just be a professor.
Yeah, you might as well use those skills while you
Yeah,
had those 6, 8 plus 4. That's a lot.
a lot. A lot. It's almost like being a medical doctor.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. I mean,
4 years of your bachelor's, right? And
right.
then how long is medical school?
So yeah, 4 years again for
Okay.
medical school.
That's 8
Then you have 3 years for residency minimum. Like
minimum.
usually, like pediatricians are 2.5 years to 3 years, really
Okay.
3 years. But and then that it just goes up from there. So if you're a neurologist, I believe it's like 6 years, 7 years. Cardiologist is more than that.
Yeah. So you're not really like practicing until like mid 30s, correct?
Correct. Right.
Yeah. Same. Like if let's say you graduate with your bachelor's at 22 and you were to go straight into the PhD program, you'll be finishing around 28,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then you have to get internship like clinical hours. You don't start till you're like 30.
Right.
If everything goes perfectly and nothing in life gets in the way.
Exactly.
Life doesn't
Yeah.
get in the way, and that doesn't happen.
I don't know. I think
As
it
a
happens.
woman, you get like pregnant. Like
Yep.
let's say you have a family, like that's gonna delay,
Right.
financial stuff delays
Right. Exactly.
anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for females too,
Mhm.
that's a whole different like ball field, because what
Mhm.
we're talking about is kind of like a male dominated kind of situation,
Mhm.
because they don't have to have a kid, or
Mhm.
they don't have to have certain boundaries that females, not our society puts us on, but it's something if the female wants, people
Mhm.
don't provide very like ease with it. They say, oh,
No.
maternal leave is there. No, it's really not as much as it should be, because
Right.
women, when you're giving birth, is there's not an explanation.
Right.
Men cannot understand that.
Right. Right.
And only women can understand that, who have had the birth, right? Because that's such a hard part about it.
Mhm.
And the field that you're going into, you're sacrificing so much. That's a hard part.
Yeah, and not all programs. There are programs, PhD programs that are supportive of their
Hmm.
students going through a pregnancy,
Right.
and there are some that are not.
Wow.
So
Okay.
it's something that you have to take into consideration when you're applying to the schools and when you
Yeah.
have your interviews.
So how do you go about that? That's a great point you bring out for any like female out there, or
Mhm.
even male who's wanting a kid with their spouse. How does that work? How do you search that up?
Yeah, so I talked to some PhD students, and they told me that when you go, if they give you an interview, to the school you apply to, talk to the students there and ask them what the
Oh,
culture is like,
okay. Yep.
and they'll be honest and they'll
Right.
tell you it's supportive or it's not supportive. At Georgia State, they're supportive
Right. Yep.
because I worked with one and she got pregnant and everything was good.
Okay.
But it all depends. It all depends.
That's so insane
I know.
that we're in that still like in that environment. Well,
Yeah.
it's mainly because we're in America, but money causes problems.
Yes,
So,
yes.
man, that's insane.
Yeah.
So okay, so going back to that, I just want to kind of put more emphasis also on the situation you're in. Right, you're Hispanic, you're first gen, you have siblings that are looking up to you and
Mhm.
kind of figuring out how your path is going to be and what their path is going to be.
Mhm.
We were just talking about your sister
Mhm.
doing some other program and trying to figure that out. Then your little brother
Yeah.
who has to eventually think about that. So how much stress do you have with thinking, like, do you ever think about that in the sense of, man, I'm literally making a path for all these people to make their own decisions,
I don't think I think about it consciously.
Right.
I'm driven.
Okay. Yep.
That's one of the qualities that I have. So I'm not really thinking about others, but it's not until we're like at a family party and like one of my cousins are like, Maria, I need help with this, like with FAFSA. Like, and I'm like, whoa, like now they have a resource,
Right.
like
Yep.
I filled out that stupid form how many times, like
Yep.
I know all those questions like the back of my hand. But I think unconsciously, like I believe I'm giving them a good example and I'm trying my best, like
Right.
and I'm just so grateful that they have someone because when I was
Sure.
going through it and right now that I am, like I don't have anyone. Like
Right.
I didn't know how to fill out FAFSA. I didn't know how to answer the questions. If it weren't for Mahek, I don't know if you ever met
I
Mahek.
did. Yep. She's a nurse now.
She's no. Her friend's a nurse. She's in like I don't know. She's in a master's program somewhere.
That's the other one. Sorry, I got that confused.
Yeah,
Yes, I do.
Imra's a nurse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
If it weren't for Mahek and I think for being at Parkview, I don't know if I would have gone to Georgia State or like
Yeah.
that, like right out of high school. I was just so ignorant. Like
Hmm.
I didn't know, like if it
Yeah.
weren't for you, from a heck, for all these, I hung out with the Asian crew at
Yeah.
Parkview.
Yep. I remember.
Like, and I learned so much from you guys,
Right.
So if it weren't for her, like I wouldn't have made it,
Sure.
like she was my primary source of information.
Yeah.
And she had her mom and her dad could help her with applications and stuff, but I didn't know how to fill out an application. I didn't know
Sure.
anything. So I'm just grateful that my siblings and like my cousins have someone to talk to and someone that could guide
Sure.
them.
And so for somebody who doesn't have that resource, right? How do they get it, right? In the same situation you're in, because
Yeah.
it sounds like it was kind of not luck, but it was like a very everything timed, aligned
Mhm.
perfectly for you, right? In the
Mhm.
sense of you found Mahek, and then you were able to kind of go from there. So how does somebody else not in that situation go from there?
I think you just need to be confident and out there.
Hmm.
Like if you really want it, you need to start having some conversations with certain people, like with
Right.
your friends.
Yeah.
Like you're 17, what you're applying to colleges when you're like 17, right?
Right. Somewhere around
16,
there.
7, you start talk to your friends,
Right.
talk to people that you look up to, that can help you,
Right.
or like professor or teachers, professors, whatever, like mentors. I think building those connections early is so important
Yeah. Right.
because I mean, you're not going to get it from, if you're a Latina, you're not going to get it from your parents unless they
Good
were
point.
here and they went to school here, and that's really not the case.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're, at least my like friend group, all of their parents are immigrants. They don't know
Right.
how it works, and even in, I'm sure you can attest to this, even in your home country, like education is different and the process is different and the time is different and all that. So
Yep.
I think tapping into your friends and like your teachers
Mm-hmm.
is the best way.
Yeah, I think the teachers is a big part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
Friends is, yeah, you're right. Absolutely, that's one way to do it. Teachers, I've noticed that you can, they're usually open about it, right?
Yeah,
Like I
yeah.
think that's the biggest part. One resource that I've wanted to see from your perspective is more of I know Google is a big thing, but Facebook.
Mm.
People don't use Facebook that much anymore, but there's literally groups out there for like psychology, Mercer
Mm-hmm.
programs, you name it, medical
Yes.
school. Like there's so many programs out there, and just typing in Google is like the newest. It's the newest thing to do these days. It's like where can I start,
Mm-hmm.
right, and kind of go from there.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't have Facebook.
I
So
know you don't. I know you don't.
but I know like there are groups. Like I know you can. I
Right.
think I think you need to have the interest
Hmm.
in order to find the information. When you're truly, you've set your mind, you don't have everything in your hands, but you have Wi-Fi.
Yep.
If you don't have Wi-Fi at home, you can go to like a coffee shop.
Hmm.
You have a cellular device and you can just, like you said, Google, and
Exactly.
you have to be confident enough to reach out to people and have conversations with people. So
I think that's um, one of the parts of society that we're starting to lack of is the connections.
mhm.
It's so important to have connections out there, and I remember that when I was applying to medical school, it was like just talking to the administrators or even the admissions team, even if they weren't part of the like direct admissions decisions, that just helped them because
Oh
word
yeah.
goes around. Oh, that person's talking. He was a really nice person. He brought up this conversation. Simple
Mhm.
as that.
Mhm.
And that can make a huge difference for your whole life. And
Oh
I've just
yeah.
noticed that there's been so many more opportunities just by saying hi.
Yes.
There was this topic that somebody brought up in medical school at one point. He's a good friend of mine, he's in dental school,
Mhm.
and so now what he was saying was that there was a student in his class right now, and he's a very positive guy, and some people took it toxic because some people are
Mhm.
very positive, and they're like, "Hey, man, that's calm down, all right?"
Chill.
And so he was when it was interview day, he went in person before COVID and everything, and he actually was picking up some of the trash with the janitor, and he just
Mhm.
had a conversation with him for like 5 to 10 minutes. Later, that a year later, was that janitor was also he was telling the admissions committee that this man is a very like he's a gentleman. That's what he was saying. It was a very simple word, but the admissions committee told him they were like that was a big decision actually. They were like
Wow.
that was a factor. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't like the
Yeah.
90% factor, but that factor definitely helped him get into
It
medical,
influenced the
to dental,
decision. Yeah.
which is crazy. You're just
Yeah.
talking to somebody and just being nice to them. That's all it takes to. That's all it takes. But like that little part right there of
Mhm.
just something that's free and takes out of your time can make such a difference. You don't know who you're gonna admit. You don't know who you're gonna meet, And that's, I think, the problem that some people don't understand is you can't be on your phone all the time. Yes, you
Mhm.
can start off there, but you also have to go shake somebody's hand,
Yep,
you know?
yep. And I think being kind to everyone, not only like in this like in education, but like
Right.
it's funny. I went to Chipotle, this specific Chipotle, like 2 months ago, and the guy, I'm like super nice to everyone, and I want to know their name
Yep.
because people feel like special when you ask for their name. And
Yep.
so the guy, the cashier, he saw my keychain. It says Dog Mom. I love and hate that keychain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when I don't want to talk to anyone, don't ask me about my dog. And then other times I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I have a pit bull, whatever.
Yeah.
So he saw my keychain and he said, oh, you're a dog mom. And I'm like, yeah, da 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 da. And then we were just talking. So like, oh, I have a dog. I need to like find a home, blah, blah, blah. Let me follow you on Instagram, the guy. And I was like, sure. So we followed each other. And I went to Chipotle yesterday
Okay.
again. And he's all like, oh, hey, like, how are you? And I'm like, I'm good. And homeboy gave me a discount. My bowl was $5.
Look at
And I
that.
was like,
Look at that.
yes. But yeah, like, I
It's
think you need,
simple.
yeah, it's simple. You just need to be friendly and like
Right.
authentic,
Mhm.
obviously.
Exactly.
Authentic.
And that's not to say like introverts can't do that, right? Because that's a different topic. But just bringing a little conversation,
Yep.
practicing a little bit, it can go a long ways for when you're interviewing somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
think that's the big part about it.
It's a skill. It's a
It
skill.
is, yeah, and you got to practice it,
You have to.
right? And
You have
I
to.
trust me, I hate it sometimes practicing it, but sometimes it's just like you just have to do it.
But you're such a good, like, people person.
I like talking to people. I love talking to people.
Okay.
My wife, on the other hand, she loves talking to people too, but the nursing field is just insane. For
Yeah.
anybody who's listening to that, it hurts
Mm-hmm.
to see our spouse do that. So we were just talking about that, like from a psychology standpoint. We were saying, she's very outgoing
Mm-hmm.
when she needs to. Like she's very reserved, but her work takes out so much because of all the patients she's taking
Mm-hmm.
care of. It's hard when she comes back and let's say we go out and she's not feeling it, because her social,
Her social battery's drained
exactly,
by
and
the time she gets home.
exactly, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. So like I get to kind of take up for that, because I'm not directly in it right now for the medical field, but
Yeah.
it's helping me kind of recharge as well. I think that
Yeah.
that's a big part because medicine it takes a drain out of you,
Mm-hmm.
and you understand that too from the patients that you've seen before.
Mm-hmm.
It's sophisticated. It's not like an engineering degree,
Mm-hmm.
which is nothing to take away. Right? Engineering is hard as it is,
Right.
but
Right.
imagine doing that with like a human being,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
trying to solve a problem with a human being, and you don't know what they're thinking.
And all their complexities and all the environmental factors is not just
Yep.
what's going on with them. It's what's going on around them.
Exactly.
I didn't get to say this, but I currently work at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta,
Okay.
specifically with the kids that come into the ED with suicidal attempts
Okay.
or ideations or behavioral issues. But it's so draining.
Right.
It's so draining. There's just so many things that go on, and a lot of social issues, a lot of economic issues. Like we see a kid and then we realize that mom has a personality disorder. Well, of course the kid's gonna act like this. Of course
Sure.
he doesn't want to live anymore, and what are we gonna do? Like, and mental health is so hard because there's only so much you can do.
Right. Yeah.
Like we can get him the services, we can get her into this home, in group home, we can get her with ABA, we can, but if mom is a drug addict
Mm-hmm.
and she's not anywhere near considering treatment, it's all going down the drain.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like it could be a very like toxic,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't really take care of your own personal mental health. Like it could become very draining and you can just stop caring and completely become desensitized
Right.
to what you see. And I'm sure doctors feel the same too.
Right.
When your patient doesn't get better, like
Mhm.
there's nothing more you can do.
Right.
It's hard.
And sometimes like people have a problem with that, right? They're like, I can do more. It's like sometimes you can't though. Sometimes the patient has to do it.
Mm.
But there's a certain boundary.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much complexity. That's what I say is like going back to it is medicine is a monster on its own,
Yeah.
and especially in America. Now you're dealing with insurance and this and that.
Don't get me started.
I know, right? Yeah. Let's get this rant going on. But it's right. It's tough.
Yeah.
You see it in Choa all the
Yeah.
time. You
Yeah.
know, the hospitals like they're there for the patients,
Hmm.
but they're there also to collect that bill.
It's a business.
It is a business.
It's a
It has
business.
to run, and
Right.
that's the hard part seeing patients who can't
Hmm.
afford it, especially here.
Yeah.
Because it'd be different, if we were able to do it like Canada does it, but there's pros and cons to that as well,
Hmm.
so it's kind of hard to balance everything out.
Yeah. And to navigate that, it's hard.
It's insane.
Hmm.
All right, so off topic because I kind of want to know. I know you watch soccer a
I
little
love
bit.
soccer.
You love soccer, yeah. All right, did you see Argentina going for? Did you ever end up like guessing that Argentina was going to get this far?
I mean, Argentina, I had like a top three. So my number one was Brazil,
Okay.
just because I knew they had the capacity and the ability to get to the final, right?
Okay. Yep.
I just believed in them. Argentina was two, and it was because my heart for Messi.
Yeah. Same.
Like
Same.
he deserves it. He needs to get there. But I really didn't know how they were performing. And then number three, I think, was Spain. I didn't really care for it, but I never would have thought that Brazil was going to get eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
Eliminated when they did.
Yep.
I never thought that Argentina was going to succeed in the penalty shootout with I forgot who.
Croatia. Yeah.
Never, never.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, they're gonna lose. So here's the thing. I'm a pessimist.
Yes.
I. It's just one of the things I need to work on, and I'm like, Argentina's gonna lose. They're gonna lose. They're gonna
That's
lose.
fair.
But they've
Yeah.
just been winning and winning, and I'm so happy for them. Like,
It's crazy. Yeah.
I'm so excited.
I used to be, or I guess I am now. I'll be on the bandwagon now, but I used to be a Messi fan. Like I was all
Mhm.
into it, right? But then after this year, after everything that happened to Cristiano Ronaldo, I was like,
Yeah.
man, I feel really bad for him because he deserves more. Like
Yeah.
he did a lot for the
Yeah.
sport. Then I was rooting for Portugal. I was like, all right, let me see how it goes. And then I was like, wow, the 1 year I don't root for Argentina, these guys just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like I did not know it was a 3-0 or something like that
Yeah.
for Croatia. I was like, what in the world?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was pretty it was disappointing that I switched sides.
I'm also very. I love that Morocco is
Oh my
just.
goodness.
I cannot believe it. Like,
Yes.
I would be today. So France is playing Morocco today.
Mhm.
I'm so rooting for Morocco to win.
Oh, I am too.
Like, I don't want France to win again. They're great.
Yep.
But I'm very much like I'm supporting the underdog all the time.
Yep.
And so I would be very happy if the final was Argentina Morocco, and I'd be happy with whoever wins.
Yep.
If Morocco won, that'd be the craziest World Cup.
Yes, it would.
But also, like, if Argentina won, like, Messi deserves that, and like
Mhm.
it's gonna be great. So
Maybe
yeah.
his last one.
Yeah, his
Maybe.
last one.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So, but when everybody talked about Morocco, I was like, "What?" I was like, "No way," because
Yeah.
it's a regularly like Islamic culture. So
Mhm.
I'm into that, and so all the people were like, "Yeah, they're underdogs." Like, did you ever like imagine putting them on your like fantasy football, fantasy soccer
Yeah.
league? And I was like, probably nobody put them
No.
on. And whoever did probably made a lot of money.
Yeah. Whoever bet on them,
Yeah.
they're making bank.
I should have done that.
For real.
But it's insane, right? Like I would have never guessed that Morocco. Like how? Who did they have that were succeeding? Like what
Mhm.
players? And you saw that. Like I just didn't know at any point that would happen.
Yeah, and like all the big teams are out. Brazil's out. Like,
Neymar was he was butthurt.
oh my gosh, poor kid.
Poor kid.
Poor kid.
Poor kid.
Like, even seeing Ronaldo lose, like, as
Yeah.
a Messi fan, like, I could care less.
You're
But
like, yeah.
like you just said, everything that he's done for soccer, and like
Mhm.
what he went through with his wife, like, and
Yeah.
losing a child, like, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it was pretty crazy to see
Yeah.
that, but I hope the best for him. I mean, he made a big impact,
Mhm.
one way or another. So I wonder what they're gonna plan with him now.
Yeah.
At
I
this
think it's
age.
crazy that they didn't start him in the past 2 games.
Yes, they
He was on
benched
the
him, right?
bench.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which was I think people were like so outraged.
Oh, yeah.
The audience they were like bring him on, like they were literally
Yeah.
chanting that out. So I was like, yeah, I mean, you probably should have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was talking to my friends, and I'm like, I wonder what's really going on, because you hear rumors and you hear
Sure.
news, and I don't believe that stuff.
Yeah.
Something's going on. How are you
100%.
not going to start your star player?
Yes, exactly.
It's crazy to me.
Something definitely is going on here.
Mhm.
That's a very good point you make. I don't know what it is, but it's got to be much deeper than what we're
Oh,
hearing
yeah.
on the news.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I was hoping for Pakistan to be in there, but that was
Oh,
no.
me too with Honduras.
Honduras. Yeah, yeah, that ain't happening.
No. And even if it did, it would be a very short
Yeah, like Qatar
journey.
and Argentina. That was quick. 2-0. Yeah, but it's funny to see like the World Cup. I don't know if you've seen like what Qatar's done with like just the way that they were. There's a lot of controversy, right, of like Qatar being there with the way that they had like slaves working and this
Mm.
and that. You know.
I don't really know much.
Yeah, so they did. I only know a little bit, right? But
Okay.
what I know from that perspective is the news was really showing like the cons of why the World Cup started and
Mm.
how they were using slaves and whatnot, migrant workers to complete this out, right? And
Okay.
so that created a lot of controversy. But now it's starting to look like fans are really like enjoying it, right? It's kind of like people are like, "Oh, come on, why would you do
Hmm.
this?" But then now because they banned alcohol, and again,
Oh yes, yes,
like you and
during
I,
the
yeah,
games.
and you
Yeah.
and I talked about that, but I brought this up in another podcast. But one of the women who were talking on like TikTok, whatever, she was like, "I feel safe." She's like, "I feel much safer at the games because not a drunk man isn't yelling at me,
Hmm.
or you know, like they're just because women have to deal with that, men don't deal with that,
Right.
which is another concern." But it was nice to kind of get that. It was like a weird right controversy balance.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, you didn't have alcohol, but the more pros than cons. And
Yeah.
then they had this migrant worker thing, which kind of, it still doesn't make it okay. So it's a lot going on. But
Yeah.
it seems like the World Cup is like, I don't know. I felt a lot more alive during this World Cup than the last one,
Yeah.
especially.
Yeah. I've enjoyed this World Cup. Like you have no idea.
There's so many upsets. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's exciting.
It is exciting. I love upsets.
Mm, me too.
Like I don't know what it is. Like yeah, right. You're like a pessimist. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're both that. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I love when like somebody truly like you're like yeah they're gonna win and they don't dominate at all. I love it. It's like the funny. I know that's like a weird thing to say, but it's like it's true because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
look when they were like, how did Morocco get through this? People were pissed,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I love that about it.
I love it. Yeah. No, I also think that how do you I say Qatar, but how do you pronounce it?
Got there. Yeah.
Qatar. I love that they have their beliefs
Hmm.
and no World Cup event is going to come and change that.
Yep.
And I've also seen a lot of TikToks about like how just Americans want everyone
Hmm.
to think and behave and have the values they have.
Yep.
And that's not the case.
Right.
And just because they're America doesn't mean that whatever we believe in or whatever our values are superior.
Hmm.
And so I think it's great.
It is.
I think it's great that Americans and foreigners have to be there and have to abide by their rules.
Right.
Again, it goes back to having cultural humility, which is something that we in America does not
Correct.
excel in.
Exactly. Nor will we excel in without really dealing with it. You're right because for those listeners who don't know like Islam is a very strict culture. There's a
Yeah.
lot of not traditions, but there's a lot of like legality to this,
Hmm.
right? And so it's if it's that's how I feel. If it's somebody else's home country, you abide by their rules. Same if you come here. If you
Right.
murder somebody here, you abide by the rules. You
Right.
take the justice or you take the injustice that was. It's just just an example, but in America, that's exactly how it is. But it's because, again, like you said, like there's ignorance, uneducation for that.
Hmm.
You have to be able to teach the people around you about certain cultural differences. That's what it is. That's what everybody's like insecure about. It's like, oh, they do this tradition. Okay, that's a good point. And like one thing that I brought up, which we respect. Like as a Muslim, like we are very respectful of other religions. Like you
Mm,
have to be. It's not like it's very
that's
against to not be.
beautiful.
Yeah, there's nothing in there. But media brings it out a different way. But one thing that I say is like in America, Christmas, right? December 25th is a big day, but Muslims don't celebrate that, right? But we still respect it. Like
Hmm.
we understand. We may not agree with it, but we just let everybody do what they do, right? What are we
Hmm.
gonna do? We're
Right.
abiding by America's rules,
Right.
and that's like what it is. So I
Hmm.
think people just need to understand that. Like you bring that up is when you don't understand somebody's cultural perspective, just like when I was talking about our wedding,
Hmm.
people don't understand that can hurt or really help that relationship grow,
Right.
right? And the people that you're talking about in your circle are what can either destroy you or flourish you.
Hmm.
So it's hard to see.
It takes humility.
Very.
Like, and
Yep.
I think certain people are more humble and certain
Yeah.
cultures are
Yeah.
more humble than
Yeah.
other cultures.
Yeah.
And I it's I don't know. I think that when you have the ability to respect someone else's culture
Yeah.
and really like, that doesn't mean that you have to do what they're doing,
Right.
like just being able to adjust and have that relationship,
Right.
that brings so much growth to
It
you, and
does.
it cultivates you culturally, it cultivates you cognitively, like
Right.
in every way. Like I don't see why you'd be opposed.
Do you ever think that people are scared, like in that situation that you bring up of humility? Do you think that they're scared just to learn something new because it's like seeking discomfort?
mm, Scared. I don't think they're scared. I don't
Hmm.
think they prioritize it.
That's a good point. Yep.
I don't think people are scared. I think they don't care
Right.
about it
Enough to get
enough
into it.
to really, yeah, like you said, you're going to be uncomfortable. I don't think they care enough to be uncomfortable
Okay, that's a good point.
and to like flip it
Mhm.
to a learning opportunity.
Yep. Right. It's also like it's hard to step in somebody's shoes like that, right?
Mhm.
Because you're right. Like if there's not enough opportunities out there, if you're not seeking those opportunities to like bring connections out there,
Mhm.
learn what somebody, whatever your classmate is doing, that can be very difficult for you to be in a box
Mhm.
and stay in that box
Right.
forever, right? And as like going back to like psychology, it's like you brought the good point. Is like you don't have an option to just stay in your culture and that's
Mhm.
it. That's
It's
like
not
the
going to
worst thing.
work.
That's the worst thing you could do.
It's unethical.
It's unethical. There you go.
It's literally in our code of ethics.
Yep.
You have to be multiculturally competent
Yep.
to, because you're going to see an array of clients,
Right.
and you're going to have to be able to empathize and form a treatment plan and listen, like
Mhm.
actively listen to them, and you can't do that if you're in that box.
Exactly.
Your clients are going to hate you and they're not going to come back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can't be putting the Hispanic culture or teaching, like a patient the Hispanic culture that maybe you grew up in to somebody who's like Pakistani.
Right.
It just
No,
doesn't work.
absolutely, it's not going to work.
It doesn't work, right? Yeah.
It's
So it's
not.
it's like that kind of stuff of just trying to help people understand. Now, one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, just because we vibe very well with like the conversations. I know anytime we have it, anyways, but with Americans in general, how do we fix this way of where Americans are very isolated?
Mhm.
And that happens with a lot of Caucasian, patients specifically that we've seen, but it's starting to happen in the westernized world
Mhm.
that we're a lot more isolated, or when I say we, as in the society as Americans.
Mhm.
So, how do we go about that? How do first of all, before I start that, how much of an impact have you seen that with their success rates? As patients or as human beings.
So, can you like elaborate more on like what you mean by isolated? Like, are you
Yes.
talking about the aftermath of COVID, or like be how technology has influences to be more like isolated?
Let's start off with the COVID one, because that's a
Okay.
good point you make, right? Because
Hmm.
that was a huge part
Hmm.
of the mental. We saw an outbreak of mental illness from there. So let's
Hmm.
start off there.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend last night, and we were talking about what's the word? In prison when they they put you in a cell alone.
Yeah, like ISO box or like
I
they
forgot.
like shun you out
Yeah,
basically. Yeah.
basically.
Yep.
Like I was telling my friend, it's torture.
Right.
If you really get to like the nitty-gritty of isolation, you're really going to isolate, and
Hmm.
not just physically, but like you have no connection to
Hmm.
any other human, you're going to deteriorate.
Right.
Like there's humans were made to communicate.
Yep.
Like,
Right.
and so with COVID, I think it was just, I think it was good and bad.
Right. Yeah. I
There
agree. I
was
agree with that.
beauty in it, and there was a lot of pain in COVID, but I think for mental health, it really put everything into perspective for every person,
Hmm.
regardless of your age, race, culture, socioeconomic status,
Right.
ability, disability. Like, I think we truly understood that we need to have connection.
Right.
We truly understood that being isolated isn't a thing, but it also, we had to isolate, like
Yeah. Yep.
we didn't really have a choice. So I think I think it should have been a learning opportunity for all of us to know how to deal with isolation
Hmm.
if we have to,
Right.
you know, but also when we don't have to, really take advantage of
Yeah.
what's given, you know.
That's a very good point. The part that you brought up that made the sense most sense for me was when we had that 2 week shutdown.
Hmm.
The first day we had that shutdown, like when I woke up that morning, it was so quiet. Everything, even the street, because we live
Hmm.
on that the outer street where
Yeah.
the cars pass by. We don't live in a neighborhood, and there were no cars outside. I went on the highway because I was a medical assistant at the time, so we had to see patients. We
Hmm.
were obligated to either way, so we had to pass. And
Hmm.
even then, nobody was on the road, and it just showed me how much we prioritize in America work,
Mm.
and how that it you could see right there that was the fault right there.
Hmm.
2 weeks goes by, everybody started losing their minds just for 2 weeks of the shelter, and people were like, I can't pay bills and everything, and that's because there's a society towards that where poverty runs,
Hmm.
poverty and money run this world, this country, and so it's scary,
Hmm.
right, to see that because you're a good. What I saw from my perspective, I was very grateful because I was able to not only maintain my job but just take a break for a second, and I just looked at everything and I was like, wow, this is insane,
And sitting in stillness and in quiet,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not used to it, especially in America, like is scary,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know what to do.
Right.
Like you don't know what to do with this. And I like that you brought up this whole conversation because I am so against hustle culture, and I don't
Yep.
I might get, some hate for that, but I
Sure.
think you have to have balance. Like, I
You
don't
have
think
to.
you can really say you're fulfilled if you're constantly going and going and
Mm-hmm.
wanting more and like never really taking a step back and like being present.
Yep.
You can't be grateful if you're always going because you're always thinking about what's coming next, you know? So, um, and again, we live in America's economic system, and
Mm-hmm.
society has all these norms on us. And we believe it and we take it and we run with it. But I
Right.
think we need to have voices that tell us, like, it's okay
Yep.
to be sick. It's okay to call your employer and say you're sick
Mm-hmm.
and not feel guilty
Right.
and not feel like you're going to lose your job.
Right.
Like we have to shift. We have, the younger generation. And I think we're doing a great job,
Mm-hmm.
by the way. I see TikToks all the time about like a Gen Z not being happy at their job and them quitting. And I know that's like, really, all right, I'll find a new job. Like,
Yep.
you want to fire me? Like, you're not going to fire me. I'm going to leave first.
That's that Gen Z energy.
Yeah, which is great, like it's great because they're not going to take whatever is handed to them, but I mean, it also has its cons too.
Yep.
But yeah, hustle culture is gonna kill us. You can
It
die
is.
from stress. People don't
Mm-hmm.
know that. Like
Yep.
you can develop an illness,
Yep.
a physical illness, from stress,
Which is very common, by the way.
especially in Latino culture.
Same here.
Depression manifests and
Mm-hmm.
anxiety manifests somatically, so
Yep.
through physical symptoms, not really like um, mental
Yeah.
symptoms. Yeah,
Well, it's not talked about, right? Depression doesn't exist. That's
exactly.
really what like a lot of cultures do these
Mhm.
days. These days, it's just been a tradition.
Mhm.
You'll be fine. Go drink some water. Go have some chai.
Yep.
You'll be fine. Don't worry
Yep.
about it. That's how it is. I had a colleague who brought that up. Right, like his dad was an engineer, and his mom was a physician.
Mhm.
He had the perfect world, right?
Mhm.
And he calls his dad and he goes, "Yeah, I got into medical school finally." I was there with him that day,
Mhm.
and he had it on speaker for some reason. And his dad goes, "Great, now let's get you into residency." Like no congratulations, no nothing.
Nothing.
And this guy just his mood just dropped. It was so scary because we were in work during that
Mhm.
time, and I was like, dude, we got to get going. But it was so scary because you could tell deep down inside he was depressed and he couldn't talk about it
Yep.
to his own family members, which is hard, right? Because we understand that we can't just be like, hey, I'm depressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sad today,
Mhm.
or I'm frustrated. You can't really say that in the cultures that we're in because of this norm, right?
Mhm.
But it's good because you're out there and I'm out there. We're trying to make that differences. Listen,
Right.
I'm here to talk about it, whether or not you're up for it.
Mhm.
But it's like sometimes we hold our parents accountable, and what I mean we, the society, but like we hold our parents accountable because they're the ones who teach us.
Mhm.
But yes, we have to teach them. They're getting old. We have to take
Right.
care of them, and we have to help them understand that there are some new traditions out there. And
Right.
for the best, you know?
Yeah, I joke with my mom and I'm like, you make me feel X when you say X. She
Right?
starts
Yep.
laughing and I'm like, don't invalidate my
Yep.
feelings. My feelings are valid.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, no, and I think also and I don't know if you can talk a little bit about this, but like religion also
Yep.
dismisses mental health. At
It
least
does.
I'm part of I identify as a Christian
Right.
and I go to a church where like it's until now really that they're kind of accepting it, but they would just be like, "Oh, you're depressed, like, oh, we'll just pray for you and it's going to go away."
Right.
Or like, "You're anxious, why aren't you praying?" You know, like God can do this and God will do that. And I'm like, "Yes, he can.
Right.
He can, but it what am I going to do?"
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Like,
Exactly. You're trying to figure it out. Right.
right, like I can't just sit here and pretend. You can't just say don't be sad.
Right.
It's like I worked with anorexic patients and like the patients would say like, "Oh, my parents just say like or everyone just says just eat." Is for them is not just eating. It's not that simple.
Right.
You know.
Exactly.
So I also think we need to be more vocal in our religious institutions and really educate if we have the opportunity to do that so
Yep.
that we can empathize, you know, and like understand people.
Exactly. Like, fortunately, I haven't. I know exactly what you're talking about because I haven't had that issue. But when I study like other parts of other religions, because I love to like know a little bit more, I've noticed that's a big part.
Hmm.
But what I've noticed also is that religion and culture blend in, and that's when you start intertwining those two things, misinterpretation comes out of it.
Hmm.
You know, and like paganism becomes a thing. You know, without having to go into it. But it's right. You're right about that because you
Hmm.
can't talk about mental health because not because it's a religious thing, it's because culture has all of a sudden, or tradition has all of a sudden um, passed through with it.
It's all intertwined.
It's all
You
intertwined.
can't
Unfortunately,
yeah, you can't isolate.
you can't isolate it, but you have to be able to read the fine print.
Yep.
What does it say in the Bible, the
Hmm.
Quran,
Hmm.
the Torah,
Hmm.
whatever you practice? You have
Hmm.
to be able to read it yourself and like hold yourself accountable so that
Yep.
you can make another path. That's
Hmm.
what I try to tell people. I'm like, whatever religion you are. Sorry,
You
go for it.
is.
You is right. Yeah, I brought the hood out for a second. So like whatever one that you bring out, right, is like
Yeah.
you have to be able to read and you have to be responsible for what you want to learn or
Hmm.
what you're willing to learn, right? Like the Torah is not there or any like religious book is not out there just for you to read it halfway. You
Mm.
need to read the whole thing and you know, like practice that way if you're going to do it. You can't just pick and choose. That's not
Right.
how that works.
Right.
But in our society, no matter what religion you look at, people pick and choose.
Hmm. What's convenient?
Yeah,
What's
right.
practical?
Exactly. Or what applies to their life and
Hmm.
that they can kind of like just ease into it. If it
Right.
starts to get hard, um, it's not really part of the religion. You know, I
Hmm.
kind of work with it and I'm like, yo,
Yeah.
that's scary to see. So
Yeah.
I see what you mean because again, like what we talk about going back to it, mental health is such a huge part of why some people use religion for that, right? And I'm like,
Hmm.
that is great. And then some people deter away from that because of maybe they've had some PTSD with it, right?
Hmm.
Like family members forcing them on it
Hmm.
or something, and that just becomes a problem.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I think it could become a protective factor.
mm-hmm,
Like that's what we're taught in school. But as a person who has been in the church, like deep,
mm-hmm,
it could also, like you said, you can have trauma, religious
mm-hmm.
trauma, and it could all like I don't know. It all depends on what you've gone through and the perspective you want to take. But I think my point is that these our religious leaders and our doctrine have to be they don't have to be because they don't have to do what Maria says, but
Right.
I don't know how to explain it. Like we
Held
need to
accountable,
held
right?
accountable.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh,
And realistic
Absolutely. I see what you
because
mean.
we're evolving and our
Mm-hmm,
we're also we have to take context into consideration.
exactly.
Mental health is very different in Honduras, in Pakistan, in Europe, in
Exactly.
Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be able to adjust a little bit.
Exactly. You're right because like whether you're a pastor or a hafiz, whatever you want, or a rabbi, like you have to be able to help the people understand it. When
Hmm.
you read it, I understand that point of reading the biblical text or whatever the case is of the scripture, but you have to help the people understand, right? They understand it because they're masters at it or
Hmm.
they've spent years of this. When you're trying to give somebody like an outsider, trying to help them understand it from that perspective, you
Mhm.
know. Just like learning in that situation, everybody learns different.
Yep.
And if you can bring the analogy of like, listen, this is like what dating is today.
Mhm.
It's so easy to just date somebody and, you know, do all that kind of stuff. Outside of that, it becomes a problem. But people are shy to talk about that,
Right.
and that's a problem. So it's like very hard because you do have to find an environment that is willing to talk about that, which is the most difficult part, I would say, in my opinion, of just like culture wise, you know, in the Pakistani culture, not talking about it. You have to find somebody who's able to talk about it in
Mhm.
that sense, and that's a tough part of being
Yeah.
a minority in general, especially here too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you have these deep rooted belief of inferiority.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And then this makes me think about the imposter syndrome. I don't know if you know what
Yep.
that is. Like you don't feel like I've been telling my coworkers and like my professors, I'm like, I think I want to work with kids because it's easier for me to think that a kid will listen to me
Right.
compared to a 45-year-old man that's wealthy,
Yep.
that has privilege,
Yep.
listening to a 5 foot Latina first
Right.
generation college student.
Very true.
So it's just these things. There's so many things that
Yeah.
influence what you decide to do and how you behave and what you think. But
Yeah. But and it's like going back to that, I that's why I have a lot of admiration for you, because the drive that you have, you know, is it's a foreign drive.
Mm.
Foreign people have this,
Oh yeah,
and so Americans may not understand that, you know.
yeah.
So, but the first gen students really understand that. Like sometimes when you're doing this, it's like to survive. It used to be like I now to the point in my life, you know, I'm grateful. It's like thriving,
Mm-hmm.
but at one point it was to survive,
Yep.
because our parents taught us, no, you got to survive. That's
Mhm.
like the first thing they had to do when they got here
Survive.
with limited money, and then kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the drive, right? Like it's very important because um, you can't teach somebody that. They have to like suffer at some point
Mm-hmm.
in order to be like, nah, I ain't doing this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm ready to get out
Yeah.
of this environment.
Yeah.
And whether it's like a poor environment or a stressful environment, you
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to like have that drive.
Yeah.
So
It's important.
so important.
But I
Unfortunately,
think we all have it. We all have it. I don't know if we all really take advantage of it, but I
right,
think minorities and people of color have this, oh, I need to like succeed. I have
right,
to like prove myself,
yep,
which is good,
mm-hmm.
but it's not everything that you should be,
Yep,
right? And you should be doing it for other people. You should be doing it for yourself, but you can maximize it and you could reach high places if you really like work on it.
yeah. As cliche as it sounds, like you don't know if you don't try.
Yep.
It is cliche, but that is exactly how it is. You
Yeah.
never know where you'll end up.
Yeah.
I think that's like our stubborn ways of being like, oh no, I'll plan it the way that
Mm-hmm.
I planned it out on this little sheet right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And kind of go from there.
I'm done with the sheets. I'm done with the planning at this point.
Same.
I'm like,
yep.
I don't know what's going on.
You're on the roller coaster.
Yeah.
That Six Flag roller coaster will
And
get you.
I'm starting to believe like it is what it is,
Right.
and I'm gonna get there when I need to be there. Like,
yeah. Yep.
I thought I was gonna be in my PhD program right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm in my master's program at
Yep.
Mercer, not where I thought I was gonna be, and I'm gonna try to be grateful for it at all times, be present, and learn as much as I can.
Right. And that's the most amazing part about it, because I know you and I like used to strive for that. We'd be the youngest ones to do
Yeah.
this or that.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, I don't, if I'm 30 or if I'm 40, if I finally get to where I want to be, that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to be in that mindset where I was like, no, medical school now,
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
no, you learn.
You'll learn.
You learn quick.
Well, yeah, somebody slapped me in the face. Yeah. Life slapped me and they're like, yeah, that ain't happening.
Sit down.
Yeah, exactly. So I did want to, you brought up a good point about like the disadvantage, right? Disadvantages for like minorities and people of color, right? And so when you bring that up, like what are some of the things that you see as a Latina, sorry,
Mhm.
I gotta get
You're good. You're
the
good.
T right. And the situations that you know you've gone through that are negative, but also kind of help you continue to keep that drive. If there are any.
Yeah. I'm gonna start with the positives. I think
Sure.
being a person of color, a minority, at least for me, I speak two languages.
Mhm.
and I am going to maximize myself and market myself to
Right.
two different communities and try
Yeah.
to get as much as I can from that. I actually just got my internship at Alianza Terapéutica Latina,
Okay.
and I'm going to be able to see clients and practice in Spanish, which, I mean, obviously in the future I want to be able to take on like Spanish speaking clients, but like I barely say the word psychology in Spanish. Like I don't even know our terms, like the terms that we usually use. Like I don't know how to say it in Spanish. So I'm
Right.
like so excited for that next year, like being able to speak Spanish.
Right.
But I think that's a pro. I think the drive that we have, that innate drive,
Right.
that I don't know if it's a survival thing, like you said, like I think it's positive. Um I think people that are minorities can almost be like, you can understand others better.
Right.
Like because you're Asian,
Mm-hmm.
but like there's a lot of similarities between our cultures, and like
Correct.
I could understand you. And I feel like that with like African Americans or like black people, like
Yep.
you understand the Black Lives Matter movement
Mm-hmm.
better. You understand corruption in your home country better, because we're all kind of going through it,
Exactly.
in
Mm-hmm.
different ways, but like at the end of the day, it's kind of the same thing.
Right.
Um, some cons, you don't have the support that maybe a Caucasian person might have.
Right.
Understanding like the culture too, like understanding their culture is
Mm-hmm.
hard, and you
Absolutely.
have to learn.
Right.
Like till this day, like I still don't know how football works, like 100%. Like
American football, right?
American
Yeah.
football, American football, and like sometimes the lingo, the
Sure.
metaphors, the life metaphors. I'm like, I don't know what you're saying, you know.
Right. Right.
Like yeah, so that's like that's something that I need to work on. Like I try to understand
I get
what
you.
you're
Yeah.
saying. Like, or I don't know if you've thought, like I grew up with sayings, like with metaphors in Spanish, and
Sure.
then like I find the perfect time to say it, but if I translate it to English, it's not gonna make sense.
No.
Like they're not gonna laugh.
No.
It's not funny. But
It's an insider.
yeah, it's an
Yep. I'm
insider.
with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what else? What else?
Those are some of the pros, right? Yeah.
Yeah, those are some of the pros. Cons, I just think the cons are like really like having to take that step and get into these places that where you don't see representation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think till this day in my master's program I haven't had a Hispanic or a Latin professor.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, like I haven't.
Well, you'll be the first one, clearly.
So like representation and stuff, I
Yeah.
think that's difficult.
It is, yeah. Especially when I see bringing it back. It's like a full circle for what you just talked about. You feel like you're the only one
Mm-hmm.
because you kind of are. You
Yeah.
know? Like that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
People don't go that far, like a lot of times because of their struggles, right? Their lives. Sometimes like it's not just because of them. It's because of what also their environment
Mm-hmm.
causes them. They may
Mm-hmm.
not have enough money to get this far.
Right. Yeah,
So
like I had a friend, she's also in a master's program, and I was telling her, I was like, girl, like my family was paying out of pocket for my master's program, and I'm like, we can't anymore.
yeah.
Like it's just not feasible.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
I love
Mercer too.
it's a
Private
private.
private school. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so, and like there aren't any, at least at Mercer, there aren't any scholarships that I know of, and I've asked scholarships or like fellowships. I applied to a fellowship, but it was like a national fellowship, and like
Right. Right.
you know. But like I was telling her about it because I was like stressed. I was like, what am I gonna do? I don't want to get into debt.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get a loan, and I didn't want to. Um, and I was like, dude, like, how do you pay for school? And she was just like, my dad, he's president of a credit union, and her mom is a lawyer, and
Right.
I'm just like, she's like, and they pay it for me, and I'm like, dang,
That's nice.
yeah, like good for you, obviously, but
Absolutely.
like,
Yeah.
no, that's I wish, like it's just not gonna happen. And so I think that's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to go through the financial struggle and
Yeah. And it's also comparison, right? Like I think
yeah.
that's such a huge that's a huge negative part of like how this works. When you compare
Mhm.
yourself to somebody else, you get nothing good out of it,
Mhm.
right? Even
Mhm.
if you're on the upper side of it, right? Like
Mhm.
let's say you're on a higher level than the person that you're comparing, it just makes you more.
She didn't feel good,
Yeah, yeah,
obviously.
yeah, exactly, right?
Like it was a very like and I love her because she's Caucasian, but she has like this diverse group of friends and like
Right,
she's so willing to learn about everything and she's all like,
right.
am I invited to the carne asada? Am I invited to the cookout?
Yeah,
Like
to the cookout.
so I love her, but like she felt bad and I felt bad,
Exactly.
but
Yep.
like it's the reality.
Right. It's true.
It's the
It's
reality. Like
facts.
and I'm a citizen.
Hmm.
I have friends that are dreamers,
Exactly.
and or that are undocumented.
Hmm.
They can't get a loan. So
Exactly.
what are you going to do?
Right. Yeah.
There's just so many constraints.
Exactly.
I think that's the hardest part, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you can get past your family not understanding what you're doing, but if you don't have the financial resources to get in the door,
Hmm.
like I'd be frustrated. I wouldn't know what
Hmm.
I'd be doing.
Exactly.
So it's hard.
And is it that's I don't know if you know that, but like is that the same for DACA recipients too? Like they aren't technically able to.
So DACA, you can go to school, but you pay. I'm not
They
sure.
pay some type of tax,
Like
right?
I think they pay out of state tuition, so it's
Wow.
it's more expensive.
Oh my goodness. That's a
Hmm.
lot.
Like you can go, but you're gonna have to pay out of state, even if you live in here.
That's insane.
And that's if I'm correct. I'm not sure. You can
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
research
I'll
that.
fact check that.
Yeah, fact check that for me. But
I had a friend that was talking about that, and she was like, "Yeah, like I was trying to go to Emory, and if it was like for medical school, she was like, yeah, it's like 100,000 or something like that. Or sorry, it was like 60, 70,000, and then she goes, oh, it's like 100,000
hmm
per year or something like that. I was like, what? That's insane. So I see what you mean. She was a DACA
yeah,
recipient,
yeah.
so DACA recipient. But yes, but I think some of the listeners, they're just for those who are listening, it's like they should also, yes, they should be grateful, in that situation, that if they're not in that boat, take
hmm
the advantage that you are. And if you are in that boat, there's ways to get there, but you have to be able to just put in more work. I think
hmm
just like having the awareness for those people, like you talk about, being able to understand that people are not all on the same boat of, hey, you can take that, just take a loan out. That
hmm
doesn't work for somebody. You don't know their situation.
I like Adam like loan the word loan activates my flight or fight system.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I hate it.
yep,
Like I hate loans. I hate having like it like I feel like it's right here on my neck, like
yeah,
breathing
yeah,
on me.
yeah.
But I found myself in a situation where I was like, I don't have another option.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm never gonna graduate. Like
Right.
if I stop and then start and say like and then you have these jobs. I don't know about you, but like I have this job. I'm not making money,
Yep.
like real money. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, and my parents don't pay anything for me. Like I pay all my expenses. I live with them,
Right.
right?
To lower the expenses.
Right, right.
Not because you are like necessarily like I want, not I need want to. It's more like a you have to right
I
now.
have to.
Yep.
There's no other option for me
Hmm.
unless I marry rich.
Exactly.
Hint, hint. I'm kidding.
Just that awkward pause silence. All right,
Right.
guys, come on.
Right. But yeah, like it's hard. It's
Yeah,
hard, but I think if you're determined, it's just part of the process.
exactly. No, that's a
Part of
good
it.
point. All right, so the last question that I love to ask
Hmm.
people is, especially my guests, because of where they come from, is from somebody listening in their situation, what advice do you have for them, or what words of wisdom do you have for
Mm.
somebody that's in maybe a similar boat to you, or maybe he's not in the same boat but wants to get to where you are?
Hmm. Wow, that's a good question. I guess I would say take time to think about what you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And really try to explore all your options. After you've explored all your options, make a decision and run. If you make that decision and you think about it too long and you start we all overthink.
Right.
It's gonna take longer, it's gonna delay, and we're all thinking about time. And that's just a reality. So you make your decision, you pray about it, do whatever, talk to your family, whatever makes you feel good,
Mm-hmm.
and run with it and expect the ugly, expect it so you can
Right.
be prepared. It's not gonna happen like you think, but also just keep that final goal, like your finish line. Never lose sight of the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like this is your finish line and this is your starting point. And my friend told me this, like, Maria's very linear. She's gonna do this, this, and this to get to here.
Right.
But you can go here first, and then come back here, and then go over here, and then make it here.
Right.
The point is to get there
Mm-hmm.
and to really be present, take in everything, and flip it to a learning opportunity, and just know, hey, I'm gonna get here.
Right. Yep.
That's all. It's hard. Whatever you decide to do in life, you want to open your business, same deal. You want to go into STEM, and this is the same for like a person of color, minority, someone that is privileged, someone that is Caucasian, that has everything.
Right.
You can have everything and still not make it, and still have those detours. And I think just being prepared for it.
Right.
Like, it's gonna happen.
The struggles.
It's gonna happen, and we're gonna do everything to get through it, and tap into your social networks and into your friends, your family, and just go. Like, don't stop, just go, and don't lose that finish line.
Exactly. I love that. That's
Yeah.
that's a good point that you make. See, that's the inspiration that I need to, so I can get back to work. Yeah. Well, thank you again for coming on this podcast. I'm not sure if you want to leave any contact information, but
So I don't know how you do that, but I would love to.
I'll get something in the description and we'll put it
Cool,
together. But
cool.
if you guys want to reach Maria for anything, not maybe dating applications, we'll see. We'll figure that part out. But if you have any serious questions,
Yeah.
I'm hoping they can reach out to you.
Yes, they can.
Yeah. So I'll get that in the description. But again, thank you so much, Maria.
Thank you.
We love you.
This was fun.
Yeah, me and Savannah especially. This was fun. I'm glad you finally came on.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can have you on again.
Yes, of course.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.